Hello everybody, Calamity here, and today I wanted to talk about Ganyu, and she's going to be getting her rerun banner in about like a day and a half or so at the time of recording. And I wanted to talk about whether or not she's worth your gems or not. Before we start though, let's just get this out of the way. If you're a person that just loves Ganyu and you like her personality, character design, playstyle, and you just want her, then by all means pull for her. So let's get started. Ganyu is a main cryo DPS. She can be used as an off-field DPS or a sort of off-field DPS slash support character, but for the sake of just keeping it simple, let's just say she is a main cryo DPS and is mainly used as one for the most part. How she does her damage is through her charge attacks. That's the main source of damage here, and that's, you can see I crowned it. Ganyu's charge attacks do have a longer charge compared to other bow characters, but she gets what's called a Frost Flake arrow that deals AoE cryo damage. And a little bit of an advanced tip for you is that this Frost Flake arrow does not have ICD. So if you're trying to do damaging elemental reactions with her, for example melt, then you can actually double melt your charge shots, resulting in really big damage. Now her skill and burst, you don't really have to focus on as a main DPS. They're nice to upgrade, of course. As you can see, I didn't really upgrade mine, but if you do plan on doing that whole off-field DPS kind of thing with Ganyu in the future, then you're going to want to upgrade her burst. One of the best weapons for Ganyu is a prototype crescent. You can get this weapon as early as Mondstadt. It's a craftable weapon, and so you can get it up to refinement 5 for even more damage. And this weapon fits really well with Ganyu's playstyle. Ganyu essentially turns Genshin Impact into a third-person shooter, and this weapon's effect gives you even more damage when you hit an enemy's weak spot. So for, most humanoid enemies, that's going to be a headshot. For most, like machine-type enemies do have like a weak spot somewhere on their body, right, and that you shoot. That'll count as the weak spot for them. But it is worth noting that not every enemy you encounter will have a weak spot, therefore you won't be able to activate this weapon's effect. That being said, still a very strong weapon, very free to play friendly, of course. I'm gonna quickly talk about her signature weapon, which is the Amos bow. This is also gonna be in the banner right next to Ganyu, and in case you didn't know, this weapon is actually on the standard banner. You can pull this on the standard banner as well. Now, is it likely you're gonna pull for this on a standard banner? Not really. I'm gonna give you some perspective here. I've been playing this game since launch. You might notice I have an Amos bow. This is the first time I pulled one since launch, and I just got it in this update. So that's what, like 3.5 years later? I forget. I've been playing this game for a long time, and I just now got my very first Amos bow on the standard banner. So if you do happen to get this early, hey, nice, you got a really solid weapon for Ganyu. But if not, you can fall back to that prototype crescent. Ganyu is actually really easy to build when it comes to artifacts. Just like any other main DPS, you're going to look for crit damage, crit rate, attack percentage. Now, as I mentioned before, Ganyu has two different ways to build her: freeze and melt. Both are very viable. They both have their pros and cons. And depending on which one you want to build, if you are going for melt, then elemental mastery is something you're going to want to consider. If you're going freeze, then you can ignore elemental mastery completely. Now let's talk about the different artifact sets you're going to use for her. If you're going for freeze, there is only one obvious choice to go for, and that is going to be a Blizzard Strayer. But luckily this artifact set is available to you as early as Mondstadt. It is in the Dragon Spine area. And once you get that domain unlocked, you can farm for Blizzard Strayer pieces. This set is basically going to give your Ganyu tons of free crit rate, allowing you to go ham on going for crit damage as well as other offensive stats for your Ganyu. If you're going melt, you're probably going to do what I did right here and go for Wanderer's Troop, which is another great early game artifact piece, since every boss in this game has a chance to drop a Wanderer's Troop. The other set you could go for is a Shimenawa's Reminiscence. This one is an Inazuma, and it is resin efficient to go for this domain, since both of the artifact sets are really good for a lot of characters. But yeah, that being said, you can use the Shimenawas for your Melt Ganyu. And the 4-piece effect here is actually beneficial because since you're delaying your elemental burst by removing energy when you use your elemental skill, that's actually a good thing. But When you're using Ganyu in a melt team, you're not going to be using her burst because her burst can actually steal your melts. And you don't want her burst to do that. You're going to use charge shots to be triggering the melt. Now let's talk constellations. When it comes to 5-star characters and their constellations, this is usually whale territory. But it can be territory for those that are really, really devoted to Ganyu. Now, if you are unfamiliar with her constellations and you're wondering if they're worth it or not, just like most 5-star characters in this game, you do not need them, but they will add a lot of value to your character. But with Ganyu, it's more about the sum of the parts rather than each individual piece itself. Now, what does that mean exactly? Let's talk about it. So, Ganyu's constellations, for the most part, are basically just going to give her more damage, right? That's great. There are 2 constellations in here that make Ganyu go from great DPS to absolutely broken DPS. And that first part is going to be called the Auspicious. This is her C2. This is just going to give you an extra charge of your elemental skill. Now, you just read that and you're like, okay. How's that any good? You said she does her damage from charge shots, right? Correct. Now let's look at her C6. Her C6 is called the Clement, and when you use your elemental skill, the next time you do a Frostflake arrow, i.e. her charge shot, within the next 30 seconds, you do not require any charging. That is actually insane. So now that because you can do your elemental skill twice, the whole combo is to start off with your elemental skill, do an insta charge shot, elemental skill again, do your charge shot again. With a combo like this, especially if you're melting it, your Ganyu can do anywhere from like 200 to 300k damage in the span of like 5 seconds. That is crazy, crazy amounts of damage. But once again, this is, you know, whale territory. This is very devoted Ganyu player territory, so if you aren't either of those, then this is not really something that free-to-play or low spenders are really going to be able to ever play with, unfortunately. Alright, let's talk teams. Try to ignore the bottom left thing, because I run out of team slots again. As I said before, Ganyu can be built into 2 teams. The first one that I have here is the Melt team. I'll show the freeze team right after. The Melt team consists of Bennett, Zhongli, Zhongling, and of course, Ganyu herself. Now, if you don't have Zhongli, Layla, or Diona are good alternative options there, or even Toma, if you've built him for a shield, as a shield character. Zhongling and Bennett are not replaceable on this team, of course, because Zhongling being one of the best pyro applicators. But because she has to be close to apply that pyro, that's why we need a shield for our Ganyu so that you can do her charge shot without getting interrupted. Bennett is here, of course, for healing and that massive attack boost. This team comp is better for single target or bosses in general, just because a freeze team, well, you can't really freeze bosses in this game, so it's better to go for melt and just go for that damage. This is what your freeze team is going to look like when using Ganyu. Now, if you don't have certain units in this team comp that you see, then you can replace, like, if you don't have Venti, then you can replace him with Sucrose for a 4-star option. If you don't have Mona, then you can bring in maybe like a Rosaria and then replace Diona with Barbara, and then you'll be able to do your freezes that way. But basically, the point of this team is to, well, freeze. You use your Diona to apply Cryo. Venti's going to help you group up your enemies and then swirl them so that you do even more damage. Mona is here to apply her Hydro and then give you even more damage amplification. And once they're all grouped up, nice and ready for you and frozen, Ganyu just does her thing and completely destroys anything that's caught up in Venti's ult. Alright, for the freeze demo, we're back in my favorite domain with all the wolves in it. I always use this domain because, well, there's just a lot of enemies in it and you can really see how well Ganyu does with groups of enemies. So that was basically the freeze combo I just did. We do Diona into Vential and then Mona to freeze them all and do her burst, which makes enemies take more damage. And once it expires, you do it all over again. You can even cast Ganyu's burst, because Ganyu gets a 20% cryo damage bonus when she uses her burst. And then, well, they're all pretty much dying before I group them up, but we can't group up the bigger wolves. I think he's behind me. Yeah. This guy we cannot group up. We can at least freeze him though, so that he stays in place and I can just freely shoot him. But yeah, freeze is really great for non-boss enemies just because, you know, freezing your enemies means they can't hit you, means you get to do as much damage as possible. We have the bigger hill trolls here. If you've had annoying problems dealing with them because of the shield one's giving you problems, freeze bypasses that. So we can, well, if the other one wants to come over here, we can drop this. And you can see he's getting frozen, which allows me to just basically just kill him down with Ganyu's charge shots. Now that we have the smaller wolves again, we can just group them up. You don't even need to use Ganyu's burst here, just once they're grouped up, we kill them again. And we have these last, or not the last two, but we have these next two. This one we definitely want the added help. And we try to want to go for those headshots because that's more damage on these wolves. Still want to try to apply swirl though with Venti. I think I might have accidentally swirled Hydro there. Here we have the two, what are they called? Mid-trolls, I guess, when they're a little bit bigger. I say a little bit, they're a lot bit. Freeze this guy, ignore the shield. Should be the last group of enemies here, so let's do the full combo one more time. So we do Diona to apply cryo, we do Venti to swirl it, we do Mona for freeze and damage amplification, and then we use Ganyu to finish the rest off. This guy again cannot be pulled by Venti's ult, so we have to just, we can still freeze it though, and then we just charge shot him until he is dead. There we go. And that is pretty much how the freeze team works. I'll be honest, I probably didn't really play that optimally, but you know, I think I got the point across that you just freeze your enemies constantly, group them up with Venti, get more damage with Mona and freeze them, and Ganyu just does the rest. Oh, I'm going into this boss fight with no energy in my Bennett. That's not good. You usually want to start the rotation with Bennett, so let me try to get some energy real fast. And there you go. Alright, so we apply our shield to ourselves, then Bennett's burst, then Zhongling's. We don't want to use Ganyu's burst here so she doesn't steal the melts. Or so that the burst doesn't steal the melts. And then we want to be close enough to where Pyronado hits our enemies. And you can see Ganyu does big damage with melt, right? And I'm sure the other Ganyu mains can agree. Sometimes I get so caught up shooting with Ganyu that I forget to apply or like rebuild Zhongling's burst again and Bennett's burst again. So you can see that compared to the freeze team, it does way bigger numbers, way bigger damage. But you definitely need a shield to accompany Ganyu. Otherwise you're gonna get knocked out of her charge shots, and that's annoying. But with that being said, I hope I was able to showcase Ganyu in a way that helped you decide whether or not you want to pull for her. Again, she is still a very great DPS, very strong DPS. If you're just casually playing this game and you're still just exploring, she is going to make your life 10 times easier. Absolutely. Honest opinion about her is that when you do get to endgame stuff, i.e. the Spiral Abyss, and you're trying to fully clear it or fully start it with Ganyu, I feel like that's when you're gonna definitely run into some, like a wall or into some friction where you're gonna need to figure out, how can I make my Ganyu do like even more damage effectively? Whereas other team comps still have a much easier time, like a Hu Tao team, a Hu Tao Vaporize Price team, or a Raiden's International team. I feel like Ganyu's gonna have a little bit more, she's gonna struggle more. Not saying impossible, but definitely harder than other teams. But with that being said, if you have any questions about Ganyu, you feel like I missed something in my showcase or just talking about her, feel free to leave a comment down below. And with that being said, if you did decide to pull on her, good luck on your pulls. Let me know how it goes. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you in the next video.